Episode 7. Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host as we listen to eyewitness encounters involving one of the most terrifying cryptids, dogmen. Our guest tonight is Linda Sedlak. While riding through the Davy Crockett National Forest with her husband and newfound dog, Bucky, Linda encountered a huge dogman that she describes as being between 8 and 9 feet tall, between 8 and 900 pounds in weight. The encounter scared her so bad that to this day she can't go out into the woods. Linda, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
To start things off, Linda, what kind of experience do you have being out in the woods?
My husband's an Eagle Scout, and we used to camp and hike, and even after we had children, we would still spend a lot of time in the woods. And I love the forest. As a kid, I was in the forest all the time.
Have you done a lot of camping?
Used to, in the past. Nothing is more fun than sitting around a campfire with the kids and my husband and trying to roast marshmallows on coat hangers that I brought, being outside.
Do you live out in the country?
No, we live on a golf course, but we're at the end of the city, and there's woodlands behind the houses across the street from me.
Is that a large woods?
Fairly, yes. And there's a lake in it. In the lake, people fish in the lake, and 2 policemen were fishing there and had a Sasquatch encounter and actually reported it. 2 policemen reported a Sasquatch sighting.
Wow, you've got some activity close then.
Yes.
So it must be a fairly good-sized woods then.
It is. It's attached to other woods. You know how it goes. Maybe a little area where people are farming and then, woods along that. Yes, there's a lot of woodland.
When you were growing up, did you have an interest in Bigfoot or anything like that?
Oh, no, not really.
What chain of events led to you being at the location of your encounter?
My husband and I were on our way to Texas from Kentucky. And we were going there for Thanksgiving with family. And it was just the 2 of us in the car. And we were going through a small town somewhere between Texarkana and Houston. And there was this dog in the traffic in the city we were in. And he was just running desperately around and scared half to death. And I said, "Hubby, stop." And I opened my car door because once we stopped, the dog turned and looked at us. I opened the car door. I got out. The dog ran past me and jumped in the bucket seat in the car where I was seated. And my husband looked at me and said, "Don't tell me we have another new dog." And I said, "Let's try to find his owners." We spent 3 or 4 hours in that town searching, trying to find the poor little dog's owners, and we never could. So we took the dog to the police and asked, it was Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Everything was closed. And we ended up at the police department, and they agreed to keep the dog, if we would just provide the food and stuff for it. So we left the dog there over the Thanksgiving holiday. And it's the whole reason that I ended up seeing a dogman in the Davy Crockett National Forest. But I have one word of advice for everybody in the world. Never on your GPS program in the shortest distance from any town between Texarkana and Houston, because you'll end up in the Davy Crockett National Forest on a dirt road with the biggest ruts I've ever seen in my life. My hubby is still fussing about driving on that road. Seriously.
Yeah, it sounds like you learned a hard lesson.
We did. And then, of course, I saw the Dogman. So it was rather harrowing event, the whole thing.
It sure sounds like it was. Before you talk about your encounter, please tell us about the topography of that area where you saw it.
It was heavily forested. We were on, it was probably wide enough to be called a 2-lane dirt road. The road was really rugged, and there really wasn't much to look at. I was in the front seat, and the dog that we rescued, Bucky, had his head up between the front two seats. He was looking out the window. He was as cute as he could be. And I was petting him and reassuring him. So I was looking out the left side of the car, looking forward and to the left side, watching the topography, watching the woodlands go by. And that's how I ended up having my sighting.
What time of day was it, Linda?
It was a sunny day, a nice day for Texas. It wasn't hot, it wasn't cold. It was a very nice, clear day. It was a good day for traveling. Thankfully, no raining because the road was dry. If the road had been muddy, we would have never made it through there. Not in that big Suburban.
Was that in the afternoon that you had that encounter?
Yes, it was. It was in the afternoon. We had to leave Houston and go back to the small town where we left Bucky, and we had to stop at Walmart and buy dog equipment.
After you found Lucky and were ready to head back home, take us from that point on. What happened?
Well, we had our GPS unit, and from that small town, heavy programmed in the shortest distance from where we were to Arkansas. That's where we had a hotel reservation for the night. And hubby followed the GPS. And that's how we ended up in the middle of the Davy Crockett National Forest on a deeply rutted dirt road. That's the reason all of this happened. Without the dog, there would have been no sighting. Without the car going slowly, there would have been no sighting. It took all the events had to work together perfectly for me to be able to see the creature that I saw. I go to Texas for Thanksgiving with family. We end up rescuing the dog, getting lost in the Davy Crockett National Forest, and seeing a dog man that I didn't even know was a dog man. What's a dog man? I'd never even heard of a dog man. I only knew about Patty. So once I started researching, it's I was terrified, to be honest.
Well, I don't think anyone can blame you for that. These aren't teddy bears. Please tell us all about your encounter. You said that the GPS directed you through the Davy Crockett National Forest. You were on a heavily rutted road. You had your husband in the Suburban. Was it just the three of you, or was anyone else there?
It was just the two of us, and the dog's name was Bucky. Justin, my hubby, just really wanted to get to Arkansas because we had a hotel reservation. And honestly, from that small town, I think the route number through the Davy Crockett National Forest was either 6 or 7. I cannot really remember, but it was a single-digit route. And at the very end of the awful washboard dirt road, there was some concrete road and a few houses. But that was just a mile of nothing but forest and rutted dirt road. Well, seriously, if it were not for Bucky, none of this would have ever happened. We would not have been on the road. I wouldn't have been turned that way, looking out that side of the car window. We wouldn't have been going slowly enough for me to see it. It just all worked together so that I could see this creature.
How did that unfold? You turned to tend to Bucky, and how did this unfold?
Okay, well, I was twisted in my seat, petting Bucky, and stroking him and talking gently to him because he was frightened. And I was looking out the front half on the left side of the car. I was in the passenger seat. I was looking at Bucky, my hubby, and out the front window ahead of the car a little bit. And I noticed a clearing. And the clearing, what caught my attention is there was a large stump in the clearing, and there was something black behind it. And I thought, wow, a bear is out in December. By this time it was December. We stayed for a while with family. And I was thinking, wow, a bear in December out in the Davy Crockett National Forest. And I was thinking, I was trying to rationalize all this. Don't they hibernate in December? Or, I was trying to make all these rationale for seeing a bear. Well, then the bear stood up on two legs. And as it stood up, it turned away from the car as it stood up. And so here's this black creature standing up, and it reached out really long arms towards a nearby tree like it was going to go and climb it or grab it or something. I don't know what it was thinking. But I saw the arms, and I thought, what is an orangutan doing loose in the Davy Crockett National Forest because of the length of the arms? But then the creature froze, and he turned towards our car, and we looked at each other. I guess he was looking at the car, but I was looking at him. By that time, I realized I had to be looking at a Sasquatch. So I was trying really hard to see as much as I could about the creature. And, I was noting the hair, thick black matted hair, the huge body size. I saw no breast, so I decided it must be a male. And I was sort of looking at the torso and legs and arms, and then I looked up at its face, and I saw a snout. And I remember thinking, I don't remember Teddy having a snout. Is that just, is Teddy's snout bigger than it looks in the Patterson-Gimlin film? I was rationalizing the whole thing as it was occurring. Okay, this is a Sasquatch. It just happens to have a snout. I had never heard of Dogman in my life. And so the creature looked at us, and I looked at the creature, and he started walking towards the car. He walked towards the road, approaching us as I'm looking at him. I'm watching this creature as we slowly drive by, and I look past Tubby out the next side window, the side windows, until I'm looking out the back window, and the creature is standing in the road watching us drive away.
When you saw the Dogman for the first time, how far were you from it?
10 feet.
Wow, that's really close.
Yeah, we were close. We were on the left side of the road. Clearing was on the left side of the road. The tree stump was not 4 feet from the road. We were very close to the creature.
That is really close. When you were driving past it like that, right before it reached out for that tree trunk you mentioned, it wasn't looking at you, correct?
No, it was not looking at it. When the creature went to stand up, he turned away from us. So I saw his back.
If it was that close to you, then it definitely knew you were there. It kind of makes you wonder why it did that.
I think it was, I'm only guessing. I think he was thinking about running away. But he stopped. He froze. And he turned to the front and he looked at us. I think initially he was running away. Why he stretched his arms out, I don't know. Like I said earlier, I was thinking this thing was an orangutan of some sort. And he was going to climb a tree. The mind, when you're in shock and you're seeing something that can't exist, tries to rationalize it. And then I was rationalizing as quickly as I could in those circumstances. So my first thought was, it's a bear. My second thought was, that's an orangutan in the forest, in the Davy Crockett National Forest? How did an orangutan get here? When he stretched his arms out, looking like he was approaching a tree in front of him, but then he froze and he dropped his arms and he turned towards us. And he looked at the car and I looked at him, just frozen, totally frozen in shock. Truly, Vic, I wish I'd never seen him. It's so affected my life now. It really has. It really has. And any creature that is brazen enough to walk towards the car, he walked towards us, this huge, big, white car, and followed all the way out into the road and stood in the road watching us drive away.
You said you were in a white Suburban, correct?
Yes. 8-seater. Yes, we were in a really big car. Big car.
That's pretty bold of it to do that then. You said that shortly after you spotted this Dogman that it stood up. I take it when you first saw it, it was down on all fours, or was it hunched over hugging that stump that it was hiding behind?
Well, I'm not sure what it was doing, but he had to be down on his knees, either hiding behind the stump or digging for grubs and bugs. A girlfriend of mine who knows a lot about these animals, creatures or whatever they are, said that they do dig in stumps for grubs and bugs and little mice. So he could have been foraging for food.
Something that big requires a lot of calories, so looking for food probably would take up almost all of its day. As far as size goes, Linda, how tall do you think this thing was?
Well, I was looking up at him through the windshield, and I had to duck my head down to see him out of the side windows. I would guess perhaps 8 or 9 feet tall. He was tall. My hubby is 6'3", his brother is 6'5". I'm around tall men. The other pathologists my husband works with, they're 6+ feet. So I'm used to looking at tall guys. And this creature, not just because of its massive girth and breadth, for heaven's sake, it was tall. I would say 8 feet, and it could have been taller than that. I don't want to exaggerate the height, but I know it was a whole lot bigger and taller than my hubby. And I'm used to seeing my hubby. I'm used to looking at him outdoors. I know how he looks. This creature would have made 4 of my hubby. And my hubby weighs 215, 220, and he's 6'3".
Wow.
Yeah, it was huge.
It sounds like it was quite the specimen.
Yes, he was. I guess if I'm going to see one, God gave me a unique specimen to see.
That he did. While you were rolling past, you said it looked at you. You were obviously staring at it. I'm sure that image of what you saw, that face looking right at you, that has to be burned into your psyche forever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever hear it make any sounds?
No. We were in the car with the windows rolled up. I never heard any sounds.
Thank goodness the windows were rolled up, huh?
Well, I guess. I don't know. He never got close enough, thankfully, to be able to reach into the car or anything. But I don't know. Dick, I was just totally in shock. I mean, I was just mesmerized. I don't think I could have spoken if, I don't know. I was just watching something that should not exist. Even though I believed in Patty. Seeing is different from thinking it doesn't exist.
Oh, sure. Yeah, when you see it firsthand, in person like that, that removes any doubt whatsoever that it is real. And once you know that they are real and that they are out there, it definitely changes the way you look at everything. So no one can fault you for feeling that way. You mentioned how close it was to the vehicle as it went past. You also mentioned that it had really long arms, as you noticed when it reached out for that trunk. When it stood up, how long would you estimate its arms were? I mean, would its arms hang down to its knees or what?
His arms did not reach his knees, but they did go down below his bottom. They were between his bottom and his knees. They were really long legs, long arms. I have no clue why the creature turned away from us and stretched his arms out. But he did. I'm trying to rationalize. You know, I'm seeing something that I've never seen before, and I'm trying to rationalize what I'm looking at so that I can comprehend it. So when what I thought was a bear stood up on two legs, as he stood up, Vic, he turned away from us. He stood twisting away from the car so his back was towards us. And he stretched his arms out, and that's when I thought it was in wintertime. But I don't know if he was going to grab a tree. I don't know why he stretched his arms out, but he did. And he froze, and he dropped his arms, and he turned around and faced the car.
It's hard enough to think for a person, let alone a dog man. It really makes you wonder what was in its mind to do those things. But that's all right. When it reached its arms out like that for the trunk, were you able to see its hands clearly enough to see if it had claws or nails?
I don't remember claws or nails. I just remember the long, long arms. And I don't want to accidentally make something up, thinking I saw something that I did not see. He had hands. I can tell you that. But I was so shocked and trying to see everything. I don't remember claws. I really don't.
That's all right. That's such a small factor in the big picture that you were trying to take in the shocked state that you were trying to deal with. No one can fault you for that. As far as its legs go, Linda, were you able to see its legs clearly?
Yes.
Oh, good. Did it have legs that were canine in appearance with that backwards knee look? Or did it have hominid-type legs like you would expect a Bigfoot or a man to have?
Hominid and huge. He was very, very tall, as I've already said. At least 8 feet, if not more. He could have been 9 feet. But his legs were massive. And I saw him twist and stand up and turn towards us. And this was a big creature. Huge. And, yeah, legs, a big tree trunk on each side of his body. But it was in proportion with the body. Everything about this animal was huge. He was a big creature. He was tall. He was built like a football linebacker. And he wasn't human.
Were you able to see its feet?
No, I looked down his legs towards his feet, but as he was moving, I don't really remember studying his feet. I was just watching him walk towards the road with his arms hanging down at his side as we're driving past. And he's approaching the road, and I'm twisting in my seat, keeping my eyes on him. And my last sighting of the creature was him standing in the middle of the road watching us drive away. But for a creature to approach a large vehicle and approach the car and follow it out into the road and stand watching us drive away, the creature was not afraid of it. Not afraid at all. If he'd been afraid, he would have kept going when he stood up from behind the stump. But he didn't. He stopped and he turned towards us. And he watched us just as I was watching him.
Being as large as it was, I can't imagine that it would be afraid of much. I'm sure almost anything it encounters out there in the woods runs from it, at least if whatever he encounters has any kind of sense.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, I agree with you.
As far as its ears, Linda, did you get a good look at them to see if they were pointed or if they were not even visible? What can you tell me about that?
I don't remember ears. His hair was matted. I think if his ears had been sticking up, I might have noticed them. But I was sort of busy looking at the whole picture, just trying to grasp what I was seeing. One thing, the only picture I'd ever seen of a Sasquatch was Patty. And this creature was different from Patty. Patty had more of a rounded belly and butt and stuff. This creature wasn't like that. This creature was taller and straighter and a lot bigger than Patty, but in a lighter fashion. You know, it equaled his height. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, he wasn't fat looking at all. He was just massively well built.
You mentioned at the start of the interview that one of the ways this creature differed in appearance from Patty was the fact that it had a muzzle. I want you to go ahead and tell us about its muzzle as far as, was it a long muzzle like, say, a German Shepherd or a wolf would have, or was it more of a compact, shorter muzzle like a baboon would have?
Well, it was like a baboon. I found a picture yesterday of a baboon online, and I was thinking that's what the top of the snout looked like. It was a flatter snout. And honestly, how do they eat with that kind of a mouth? I mean, he didn't open it.
I'm glad he didn't.
Well, yeah, but at least maybe I could have seen his teeth or something. But he never opened his mouth, so I don't know how wide it opened. But I remember looking at it and thinking, I didn't know that Bigfoot had snouts. And it was a sort of a flatter snout. It was not a dog snout. If it had been a dog snout, I'm smart enough to have said he's got a dog snout, but it wasn't a dog snout. It was a different kind of snout, and that's what threw me.
Well, that's understandable. Moving on, you mentioned that its fur was matted, Linda. You also mentioned that when you first saw it, you noticed that you saw this black thing hugging that tree stump.
Well, he wasn't hugging it, Big. That's very important. He was not hugging it. He was crouched down behind the tree stump, either hiding or digging for grubs and bugs. I don't know why he was there, but he was crouched down.
Oh, okay, I see. I've got you.
And I thought it was a bear. You know, the human mind tries to rationalize what they're seeing.
Oh,
So I
sure.
thought, oh, there's a bear. Yeah, there's a bear behind that tree stump. And then it twisted away from us in the car, and he stood up, taking a step, and he stretched his arms out to the side like he was going to go and grab a tree, but away from his body. I have no idea why he did that. I cannot explain it, but he did. I don't know if he was going to grab something to hide. I don't know. But his arms were extremely long. And then he stopped and he turned towards us in the car, and he looked at us in the car, and I looked at him.
When you two had locked eyes like that, did you, or through the course of this whole encounter, did the thought that it might not have been alone ever cross your mind?
No. I was in shock. I did not see another animal in the clearing. If there had been more than one, I'm sure I would have seen it. But the creature was alone, and I saw nothing else around it. Nothing alive. Just the stump and some trees at the edge of the small clearing.
I'm so glad you didn't see any other ones. That would just add fuel to the fire. Now, what kind of after effects have you had? And we've talked about this before on the phone, but please share with the listeners the after effects you've had to deal with as a result of seeing this Dogman.
Well, when we arrived home, I was thrilled to death. I went to the Bigfoot Forum and proudly announced I had seen a Sasquatch. And I was really excited about it. And I was describing it to one of the really nice members there. I was personal messaging back and forth with this guy. And I said, the one thing that's bothering me is that he looked down or something, and he had a smell. And the gentleman I was talking to sent me a message back saying, LOL, you did not see a Sasquatch, you saw a Dogman. He understood enough about my encounter, and from what I was describing to him, this nice guy was able to identify the creature I'd seen. I'd never even heard of a Dogman. And I messaged him back and I said, what in the world is a Dogman? And he provided articles that I could read about it. Personally, I wished I had never read any of those articles. Oh man, a Dogman is I don't know if it's urban legend, but there have been some murders and deaths attributed to wild animals in the area and down at land between the lakes. People have sent me newspaper articles for me to read and stories so that I would know that these creatures are in Kentucky so that I can take appropriate precautions. Of course, the best precaution would be to carry a mortar with me at all times, ready to fire. I think that's the only thing that would kill something like that.
Yeah, it's a good idea to be prepared when you're out in the areas where they might be?
Well, I don't have to worry about that, Dick. I don't have to worry about the areas where they might be, because you're not going to find me in areas where they might be. My life has totally changed. I cannot go in the forest anymore. I cannot go hiking and camping.
Now that you know they're out there.
Now that I know they're out there. I don't think Sasquatch scared me. It was the Dogman, and reading about the Dogman, and pulling up some of the newspaper articles where they have been involved in vicious slaughters of humans and pets, that really stopped me from going out again, ever, in the forest. I really don't want to die being torn apart. No, that just doesn't sound like a fun way to go.
That doesn't sound like a good time to me either. I can't blame you for being very cautious now that you know they're out there. As far as your family goes, do you let your children go out in the woods, since you obviously live so close to one?
Well, there's not too much I can do. They still go out, and they do not believe that these animals exist. They think I saw a shadow. They try to rationalize it away so that they're not afraid. And because of this book, I have become pro-kill, to get a body produced so that innocent hikers and campers will at least be aware of one of the dangers to be found in the forest. You know, I'm pretty sure that Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Dogman are responsible for some of the people who go missing in David Crockett's books. But I think there's also other things. You know, there's human interactions, Sasquatch, and people are saying there's really some weird supernatural events occurring.
Yeah, with all the people that have disappeared, it really makes you wonder what was behind a lot of those cases. We're never going to truly know. Before you had your encounter, Linda, you didn't know that dogmen existed, but how open to the possibility would you have been that they did, in fact, exist?
I probably would not have believed them. I would have never believed that something like this existed if I had not seen it. Never. I would have thought people just didn't understand. You know, that Sasquatch have different size faces or something, you know, because I saw one with a snout. I had no clue. That's why this was so shocking to me.
Well, you know how it is. You can never prepare yourself for an experience like this. When we're small, our parents tell us that monsters don't exist. And then, unfortunately, when someone like you comes along and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you see something like this, and next thing you know, you realize that they do. So that just unfortunately has a way of turning your life upside down.
You know, I think I've had Sasquatch encounters without seeing them, but it was just playful stuff. When I was probably 7, 8, 9, some girlfriends and I would go off in the woods. I love to hike and be out in the forest. And we found this stream that had this beautiful sandy bottom, clear water area where we could jump in and swim and play, and we would go there all the time. Well, one day when we were there, we got pine cones thrown at us. Not trying to hit us, just, around us. And after a bit, I got out of the water and I looked around. And I'm thinking, who's throwing the pine cones? They must be hiding behind one of those trees. Well, then a pine cone came from a different direction. And I thought, we don't know who's out there. We're 3 little girls. out here in the middle of nowhere. So it freaked us out, and we left. And we went back a couple of times after that, but it happened again, and so we stopped going. And now I had no clue about Sasquatch. So now I'm wondering if it was a Sasquatch, maybe a young juvenile, just throwing pine cones, interacting with us. But I think if it had been one of our friends, they would have giggled. You know, but I'll never know. But it just makes me wonder now that I know that they exist. You kind of look back over your life and think, I wonder if that could have been a Sasquatch here, there, or wherever.
Back to talking about the ramifications of your encounter, Linda. How did your family react to you telling them about what you saw? Your husband, from what you've told me on the phone, your husband did not see that Dogman. How did he react when you told him what you had seen?
Well, my husband is a man of science. He's a pathologist. And he sees things in black and white. And he's brilliant, but regarding Sasquatch and creatures such as that, he's very close-minded because, you see, they do not exist.
Uh-oh.
So, obviously, I saw shadows, I saw a bear, I saw something that was not a Sasquatch because Sasquatch does not exist.
Oh, of course. How could they exist?
And I asked him to please turn around and go back because at the time I didn't have enough sense to be afraid of what I've seen. So I did tell him that I saw something, and I actually said, honey, please turn the car around. Let me go see if I can find some evidence. I was so naive. I guess I thought the creature just kept walking off. And maybe he left a footprint or something that we could take a picture of. I don't know. But I wanted to go back. And I'm very thankful that my hubby said, he looked at me and said, because of you rescuing this dog, having to spend $100 on food and toys and everything else, we're not going to make our hotel reservation tonight until about 3 a.m. And he said, I'm not turning the car around.
You know what? I'm glad he didn't turn that car around.
Me too. That's how naive I was, truly. I had no clue what those things were. And like I said, once I found out and I read about them, I was terrified. I never knew that something like that existed. You know, if I had seen the Type 4 Sasquatch or Bigfoot species, I don't know. I think I would not have believed what I was looking at. But this thing was close enough to Patty to where I could rationalize it. It made sense because I believed Patty to be real. But if I'd seen the Type 4 Vic, I don't know how I would have coped with that. I had a hard enough time when I found out that the snout meant it was a Dogman, and I read some about them and found out how vicious they can be. But how brazen is that? The creature approached our car and was standing in the road, watching us drive away. What kind of animal or creature does something like that? Usually they run, like he did at first, when he turned away from the car and stretched his arms out after he got up from crouching or digging, whatever he was doing behind the stump. He turned towards us, and he did freeze for a second, but then he started approaching us. And by the time we were 20 feet down the road, He was in the road watching us drive away.
That's truly the definition of bold right there. After your encounter, Linda, did you ever look into whether or not there had been other reported encounters from the Davy Crockett National Forest with dogmen?
I never did that. I never thought about doing that. I did, when I got home, report my sighting and the location of it, and places where people leave sighting reports, because the whole way we'd been driving, getting there, honestly, I would see, like, dark movement behind trees, and I kept thinking, shadows, the shadows are weird in the forest today. But then, when the shadow behind the tree stump, the creature stood up. As I look back, I'm wondering if they're not a good many Sasquatch, Dogman-type creatures in the forest in that area.
It sure makes you wonder. Now, this is something we've talked about on the phone before. I want you to share this with the listeners so that they can get your opinion on this. What would you have to say to individuals that seem to just want to dismiss the possibility of dogmen even existing? Though people that allude to the idea that this is just a case of mistaken identity, people are seeing a Bigfoot and mistaking it for something else.
Well, I would understand why they would feel that way. That's exactly how I felt until I saw one. I just thought it was misidentification. I didn't even know these things existed. If I'd read anything about them, I did not remember it. But I would have never believed in this. I would have never believed in the type 4, the type 3, type 1 and 2, and I just found out what a type 2 is in the past couple of days. It would have been my opinion of what Sasquatch look like.
When you see something that looks like a Bigfoot, that is a shock, but since they look fairly close in appearance to how humans do, it's, in my opinion, not the kind of jolt that you would get from seeing a dogman out in the wild.
Now, I can agree with that. You're looking at a huge, massive, tall, hair-covered creature. And that is shocking to begin with. And it had more hair than Teddy, I think. And it was matted down. But once, when I saw the snout, it was like my mind just cut off. Like, enough is enough, and I cannot handle anymore. It was too shocking. And he was approaching the car. And he walked out and watched us drive away.
You know, Linda, the emotions that are coming across in our interview here, they bring a question up in my mind that I want to bounce off of you. For an eyewitness, for someone that's seen a dogman and unfortunately feels like they don't have anyone that they can talk to about their experience, this person feels like they don't have anywhere to go to try and get answers. What would you have to say to them?
Well, I would say to reach out to believers on Facebook. There are several sites on Facebook for Dogman believers or Dogman Encounters, or just mainly focused around the Dogman phenomenon. And I would recommend going there and talking to other people who have also seen these creatures, who have also been traumatized by knowing that they exist. It's not just the sighting that traumatized me. It's knowing that these creatures are all around, everywhere, and that people are hiking and camping with no clue. no clue whatsoever that these things exist and that they're in the forest. But I would truly go to the Facebook Believers Only, Dogman, Bigfoot, look them up and join and start sharing, because that's been a great blessing for me. It really has.
That's really good advice at both Dogman Believers, and that's David Kyleman's Facebook group, and Dogman Encounters, which is my Facebook group. At both of those places, you're going to find a lot of people who have encountered dogmen. Just like Linda mentioned, you can tell them your story, ask questions, get support. It's a great way to try and deal with the trauma of having been through such a situation. Now, having said that, too, I want to make something clear here. If you have seen a dogman, you can always reach out to me through either of my websites, dogmanencounters.com or dogmanencountersradio.com. You can go to either of those websites, send me a message. You don't have to be willing to have the details of your encounter shared with the public. If you just want to talk, if you want to get some answers about what you've seen, what you've been through, if I can answer your questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. So if you need someone to talk to about your experience, or if you need some place to go to get this off your chest, just like Linda has mentioned, there are plenty of places out there where you can do that. You're not crazy and you're not alone. You just unfortunately were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, having said that, Linda, do you have any closing points you'd like to make?
Well, I just think people need to take precautions when they're hiking. Don't go off in areas that are isolated. Stay on the main path. And definitely join your group and David's group on Facebook, because there are people there who understand and who aren't going to call you an idiot and say you're a liar. And I bet you saw a tree trunk that walked across into the road. Some of the things I've been told. Really, anybody that has seen a creature that should not exist, in quote, does not exist as far as you know, yeah, please, anyone that's listening, I really do recommend Facebook, the good groups on Facebook. It is so nice. People understand. People understand being afraid. They understand, that we all know about the dangers you could encounter, and nobody else knows. And we're having to live with this burden that we've got kids and friends out hiking and camping who don't believe. That's the only reason I've become pro-kill. I want a body produced so that people will know these things exist, and that people, when they plan to hike and camp, can take into account the possibility of encountering those creatures.
That is a terrifying thought, how many people are out there that just don't know what's out there.
And my kids are part of that group. My children are right up there.
That's not a comforting thought, to say the least. Well, Linda, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time. I know from talking to you several times on this, at first you were apprehensive about the idea of coming forward with your story, but I am so glad that you did agree to share it with the public. I think it's going to help a lot more people than you'll ever know. Thanks again so much for your time, and thanks again so much for sharing the details of this encounter with us.
Well, Vic, thank you for asking me. And if me talking about this can help one person, or somebody would like to contact me on Facebook, I would be more than happy to discuss it and talk about it and help them cope with their fears. I totally understand how they're feeling, because I've been there and I'm still doing that.
Well, Linda, thanks again for your time so much. I really do appreciate it. Thanks again for coming.
Well, thank you, Dick, for inviting me. I appreciate it. We're getting the story out. Maybe people will find out and take precautions.
That's right. I hope they do. Well, thanks again, Linda, and have a wonderful night.
You too, Dick. Bye-bye.
Bye.